Alright, so now we move on to Chapter 4. There is a large portion of Light World shenanigans to get through that I don't personally call secrets, but rather missable events, so I'll quickly summarize a large portion of them. Tenna's condition will depend if you recruited all the Shadow Guys and Pippins. If you didn't, his condition will be worse. But if you did recruit them, then they'll tell Susie how to fix him up. When starting off Chapter 4 with Susie, you can go through your home and interact with everything to see Susie's reactions. My favorite of course is going to be the bedroom, where Susie notices that Chris's side is lacking trophies. So she steals a star from Asriel's side and tosses it to our side. There, our own Susie trophy. Also be sure to grab more money from Asriel's drawer. This was also something you can do at the start of Chapter 2. You can interact with the bloodstains on the carpet to trigger a small cutscene where you and Susie will scrub them out. Also, if you check out the bookcase with the questionable dinosaur, you can fluster Susie, and she'll ask to see it again. If you inspect the fridge to find nothing to eat, Susie will comment on a photo of Asriel where she mistakes him for Ralsei. Chris insists to Susie that they look completely different, however. During church, a number of different scenes can play out depending on your choices. You can skip the sermon by falling asleep, or find out that a young Chris and Caddy try to summon a demon if you chose to pay attention. But if you rummage through your pocket, then Susie will prattle on the items you're carrying, depending on your Dark World inventory. The best part is the stickers, based on the dark fruit item. Look at them, sticking to each other. However, if you don't have an inventory, then Susie will dig into her pockets. But she's wearing Asriel's clothes thanks to Toriel, and will find a letter that way. It's a cheesy poem for Caddy by Asriel, along with a piece of really old chocolate. In the Dark World, the chocolate is a super powerful healing item that works only for Chris. Susie and Ralsei can eat it, and they'll have their own comments. Also, be warned, you cannot trigger this event by tossing the ball of junk, because Chris will be unable to do so at this time. Back at church, you can mix the fruit juice perfectly for Alphys and hand it over to her. Or drink it right in front of her. Yeah, that's my opinion on Mew Mew Kissy Cutie. Depending on Weird Route shenanigans, the scene with the holidays and Toriel will play out differently. Typically, Noel has gay panic when Susie speaks to her. But in the Weird Route, she seems much more interested in Chris instead, and she's the one to approach us to work on the project at her house, much to Chris's frustration. Also, Susie makes a reference to the Weird Route during this, which I know Snowgrave is a much cooler sounding name, but I'm just going with Weird Route because that's the formal title apparently. Once we are free from religious obligation, we can go and check up on everybody. If you didn't know, Burger Pants currently has an arc going on where he thinks he made a girlfriend who he hasn't met yet. You find out in this chapter though, that it's Nice Cream Man. Or rather by his new name, Blue Bunny, which is a reference to ice cream because you know in Undertale he sold ice cream and you get it. There's a whole gag with Sans and Susie where she asks if his store is open, and Sans will beat around the bush asking us to check the sign. He'll change it due to Susie's demand, but it'll change to Clopen. Funny enough, we get a glimpse at Sans's ability to be in two different areas seemingly at once, since he can be seen grilling a cattail, a callback to his Undertale job and his hot dog stand. Onion San does not appear today, with Susie making a comment that they're not showing up. If you come back later, you can see this character formerly named Normal NPC, the bird-striped character from the library. He tells us don't wait, especially the don't, then disappears if we leave and come back. If you go back to the library, you'll see that they're still blocking certain books that we haven't been able to read yet. If you didn't know, the books can be read after chapter 2, and they contain lore about monster dust and burials. There's also an additional book on how to take care of humans that Toriel checked out several times. It has photos of humans that makes Chris feel uncomfortable. If you're on a weird route, then you can visit Birdley in a hospital. You can warm him up and change out his water to make him feel better, and it turns out Chris was the one that brought Birdley here. During the postgame of Chapter 2, you can visit Napstablook's house to talk to who is most likely Hapstablook, the ghostly cousin, also known as Mettaton in Undertale. In Chapter 2, Chris promises to bring them something for entertainment. And now the next day, which is technically Chapter 4, is that point of time where you can offer your TV/Tenna for them. Once you give away Tenna though, he will disappear from Castletown, so it's recommended to check on Castletown first before handing off Tenna, so you can catch all of his cutscenes. Also, Rules can be seen forcing his inclusion during the rematch with the Weather duo. During their ultimate attack, a lampshade joins in, which is Rules' way of blending in, but the Weather that stays together did not like it at all. In a cafe, where you can see recruits, you can read Shudda's description and it references real scary monsters, probably because they hold their eyeballs similar to Krun. Also, if you recruited Bloxer in Chapter 1, then you can see that their body has achieved Ultra Instinct. Don't skip out on seeing Ralsei's room. The depressing revelation sparks a furniture collecting side quest that won't be triggered if you skip this. At this point in Chapter 4, you're supposed to meet up with Noel in front of her house for the Skull Project. Once she heads off though, you and Susie can head over to a diner. If you grab the money from earlier, then you can trigger a very wholesome scene where the two bond over a meal. Once it's done, you can meet back with Noel, who will make a comment about how long the two took. You'll also get a unique dialogue if you decide to have the tea party at Castletown before heading back to Noel's. While investigating, you can go to Noel's room and pluck a pencil from her desk. It'll be a new sword for Chris to equip in the Dark World called Jingleblade. I noticed its description matches that of what Noel would have given to us at Chapter 1 before being interrupted. If you go into the closet and observe every box with Susie and Noel with us, Noel will ask if we really had to inspect everything. Susie will unintentionally make an Among Us reference. And if you mention this on Twitter at 3 AM, then Toby Fox will update the game and remove all your memes. Once you're in full control of the player's soul, you must go through the vents. You can see that Asgore is actually in the house with you guys, but he's in the washroom, which might explain why Chris was staring intently at the door earlier. After Asgore leaves the washroom, you can go to Carol's room where you can see Asgore there, and he's plotting something devious to win Toriel back. Something to do with a black shard. When Chris is in the kitchen, if you get caught once and go right back, you can loiter for a bit and see Chris head off on their own. They then start to play the piano. Most folks might already know this, but did you know that Chris plays different songs? Just leave and come back and you can hear Chris playing a bunch of different themes, including Rules's. I think the song that surprised me the most was when Chris plays the song where you and Ralsei are on the swan boat. I'll summarize the dialogue that plays out idling for too long. When Noel hangs out with Susie in the living room, you can wait as they talk about horror movies. A notable one is about a protagonist who loses their hand, which is a recurring theme for Chris whenever they happen to interact with the dark shards. You find out Noel and Caddy used to watch horror movies, but Caddy apparently took it too seriously for Noel's liking. And also Noel mentions an angry video game guy who makes videos and loves horror movies, an obvious reference to AVGN and Cinemassacre.
2600. Well, if you don't like playing video games, why the f*** is he playing video games?
Now, if you idle long enough while Susie and Noel are in a basement, Noel will mention being scared of basements thanks to Dragon Blazers 2. They'll talk about how the game had a basement level that scared them thanks to the repeating music and such. And they'll also bring up the fact that the game had an evil route that involved killing everybody. Neat. Skipping ahead, when Chris is fighting with themselves in Des's closet, Noel and Susie will talk about Chris. Noel will mention how odd they've been acting recently. Susie doesn't seem to notice, but again, she is a relatively new girl in this town. And then Susie brings up Chris's flirting tactics based on previous encounters. But a notable lore drop I appreciate is Susie mentioning that Chris and Noel rode a Ferris wheel together when they were kids. And apparently Chris shook the car and turned back to smile at Noel. Now on to Weird Route shenanigans. I'll quickly mention that cutscene where the soul takes over Chris and forces the thorn ring on Noel, because what was initially a ring of flowers that withers on screen has been updated to change to a series of red thorns. This change was most likely because people thought Noel was being deflowered, which I don't want to get into the details, but I do understand the visual change was needed to change the tone of the scene. Did you know if you abort the Snowgrave route by selecting Please Don't to Noel, the heart will end up in the vents? Chris can also catch you being nosy if you're taking too long, and they'll actually lead Noel out of the room, then come back to catch you. This will also nullify the weird route, by the way. But if you play out the scene as normal, Chris torches their soul in the bathroom, and this actually harms us and reduces our HP to 10. There are other ways to lower it too, which I'll get into later. Now if you want to get back at Carol a bit, you can activate one of the Santa Clauses before leaving. It triggers a new cold cutscene where Carol approaches Chris from behind, grabs their shoulder, and says, "Turn it." After the visit with Noel, if you've collected all the eggs so far, you can go back to the diner. Inspect the door, and you get some extra flavor text of a customer noticing you. You can follow up with Burger Pants after this, and find out that he was stood up on the date. But then he'll get a new text that'll raise his hopes. Now we're skipping ahead to the Dark World. Technically, you can reach the night in the beginning when they're pushing Chris back. Susie yells at Chris to attack, but they don't. If you skip the prophecy in Chapter 1, then Susie will mention that fact. You might come across some steps we haven't climbed yet. If you observe the shadows in the corner here, you can find a chest that makes climbing worse. When you enter a battle with Gerson, you can highlight him as an act option. He'll comment, "I'm old!" This is actually a callback to the first Earthbound ROM hack Toby Fox made called Arn's Winter Quest, where you can fight a Starman Senior who says the same exact thing. If you use Gerson a second time in a battle with the Bath Lizards, then he'll give everyone candy except Susie. Now, fun fact, if you try to backtrack while Gerson's in your party after viewing the first prophecy, he'll destroy that one instead. When Gerson asks us which way to go, you can answer further left despite already checking there. Then you get a special cutscene where Gerson likes how you like to forge your own path, and an empty chest will appear, but the experience of this event will give Chris +1 max HP. You can also play the piano solution early, where a slightly different scene plays out. Susie tells the frogman they're wrong, and Gerson laughs it off cause we still gotta fight. But later on, if you solve the piano puzzle without both hints, then Ralsei will make a comment that we must know a lot of things, and we must be an expert on the prophecy. The dark candy scene is a callback to Undertale, where taking too many knocks the ball over. But Susie's a champ who continues eating him off the ground. Speak to Ralsei to have him help too. Also, you get unique dialogue if you don't have any more room for candy, where Chris takes out every item to see if they have room. We don't, and Toby Fox calls you a nerd. It wasn't me, it was you. If you use the old man twice during the second battle, he'll recruit the monsters and earn the winnings. You can interact with them in his study too, but they'll disappear later on. Also, if you didn't know somehow, Toby Fox is a huge fan of SpongeBob, so when Gerson asks Susie to proofread his letter, she'll mention that all he wrote was "the," a reference to SpongeBob struggling to write an essay for boating school. If you toss 10,000 dark dollars in the spring then come back to it later, you'll find an OP armor that's most likely a reference to the Spider Baker, Muffet. The Gold Widow, powerful armor with the drawback being less money earned from fights. Also, an additional $1 is donated for every egg you collected, but you still need to donate at least 10,000 because you can only donate in intervals of 10 bucks. As you move on to the puzzles, you can speak to Susie to swipe a ladder for Ralsei's room. And then later, hey, it's the thought that counts. While looking for the piano solution, if you go all the way to the left side of this room, you can find a booty-shaking NPC named Tao. You can't really interact with them even when you hack the game, as shown by this video by Kes Magic. When approaching Jackenstein's fight, the line, "You shouldn't come here," is a reference to a machinima video titled Half-Life: Full Consequences.
With some on writing under it saying, "You shouldn't come here."
Also, if you keep using the Scaredy Cat act, then Jackenstein will cut down his dialogue as well. This includes the nice pumpkin getting blown up. And he just spouts long. Also, he spells tutu correctly when you're scared. After getting the climbing claws, you can backtrack to climb to new areas. One of the areas triggers a tea party with Gerson. If Chris refuses to drink tea, then Gerson will offer an apple, which Chris will eat on their own accord until the core remains. But in a weird route, Chris will voraciously chomp and eat even the core. Backtracking to another climbable area allows you to fight Miss Mizzle. In this fight, you can embezzle her for a bitter tear, a powerful healing item that restores the whole team. Also, somehow I missed this room during my multiple playthroughs of Chapter 4, but if you keep going right from Gerson's study, then you'll find a bunch of cups trying to prevent you from waking a water sprite. When looking for the solution for the grand piano, there's a section where Ralsei will ask us to think about what Susie's doing. This plays out a cutscene where Gerson has Susie write down the solution we're looking for. You can refuse to try and visualize other things, like the night. Funny enough, there is a secret room that shows the prophecy of Jackenstein growing the beard, something that was teased leading up to the release of Chapter 4, but also something Toby Fox himself spoiled during the Undertale 6th anniversary stream.
Jackenstein grows a beard. Spoiler. Sorry.
But on a weird route, if the player visualizes Noel instead, we'll cut to a strange cutscene. During the story, Chris unlocks the ability to play pianos, and it's at this grand organ where we can find a bunch of musical-related Easter eggs. I won't go too in-depth with each one since there's a whole big video that already covers that. It's linked in the description and there's quite a few, so I'll quickly highlight what I thought was the most interesting. Playing Flowey's theme will have Ralsei say that it sounds friendly. Susie will recognize the legend opening theme and ask if we're trying to serenade Ralsei. Playing Toriel's battle theme from Undertale will have Susie and Ralsei comment that Chris should play it for her. And if you play Megalovania, you can also replay the sheet music solution for Susie to comment that it sounded a bit off. Now, as many most likely know, you can do a side quest to find a mythical magic axe for Susie, which unlocks a secret fight with Gerson. But did you notice the detail of the background changing as Gerson describes every chapter of his unfinished story? It's well known that it hints at future events to come, so I like how the scenery adds a new layer of speculation for us fans. Also, in case you didn't notice, in the beginning of the chapter after Ralsei heals Chris, Susie cannot use her healing ability. She doesn't get it back until after she heals Jackenstein, and can still be improved up to a certain threshold in this chapter. During the Sanctuary interlude, there's a scene where interacting with the piano prompts Susie to tell us a personal story. At the end, you're given a few options to respond. If you try to make Chris say that they'll never play the piano again, they will cough over your words. But during the weird route, Chris will bite into their hand hard enough to draw blood, and Susie will regret opening up to us. While still on the weird route, you can interact with the candles, and if you choose to pray to Noel, then Chris will get mad and kick the candles. Now in the second sanctuary, you can find the moss room if you go to the right while Susie runs to the left. Down this long hallway is where you can also collect the egg, if you spot the egg shape being slightly different on a specific stained glass window, past all the organ heads. You do get a chance to come back here during the third sanctuary if you talk to this organ head and answer no to their question. Sadly, there is no difference if you eat the moss with the party or without. The hidden room that unlocks the path to the egg also has a peculiar book that provides some extra lore. Now we can do the typical back and forth at this point to reach the egg room. There's some extra interactables in the darkness before acquiring the egg, like coming across the canvas early where someone drew a tree without the bark, and an art club person who doesn't know how they got there. In this area full of statues and prophecies, you can find the original Star Walker in the bottom right corner. How original. Now in the third sanctuary, we're allowed to backtrack to areas from the first. Sadly, you cannot fight Gerson if you already missed out. If you go back to Jackenstein's fight room, you can find their pumpkin. They'll laugh at your jokes even without the punchline. But the moment Ralsei tries to tell a story, if you go back to the puzzle piano rooms, you get a couple of unique Ralsei dialogue. And then in the other room, a new scene plays out where Susie teaches Ralsei about noobs. And if you go back to where you first met Gerson, you can find a bath lizard that'll heal all your TP. There are a lot of prophecies you can find in the last section, but for now I just want to highlight the one that actually shows the angel, but it's blocked from our view. However, Susie and Ralsei react to it, and Chris simply feels strange looking at it. Now, during the light switch puzzle, you can go to a room further up north. Inside is another dark room where the music suddenly cuts off. There is a switch to the left that activates a treasure chest, but if you hurry to the right, then you can catch the silhouette of Friend amongst the ripples of light. You only get one shot at this too. Before the Titan fight, you can go back to Gerson's study and enter a special room where you race to the top with this annoying ass dog that won't stop absorbing me. It's a fun little minigame where no matter what, the dog wins. But they're not interested in the chest, but rather Papyrus's special attack. You get a dog dollar for this inconvenience. When you reach Gerson's study in the second sanctuary, you can buy some Rhapsody for about $100, except it's actually $99. Susie will make a comment saying that you guys don't have exact change. But if you do have exactly $99, then Susie will say something different. Now for the Titan spawn fight, you can actually kill them. Doing so will raise your team's stats, but the menu will have a new stat line, showing Slay or Purify depending on your actions. Also, if you keep dying to the Titan, then the game will throw some free items at you to help out, courtesy of this cute little cup. However, when Gerson shows up to help with the Titan, he'll provide free healing and even revive down teammates. So don't worry about losing momentum during this hype moment because you literally can't. Chris's HP will also never go down below 1 either. After the scene, Susie spoils the ending of Deltarune. You can backtrack and see an eerie message. Another hand presses against Chris and doesn't let them backtrack. There's also a guitar twang playing out, but it's so quiet that it's near impossible to hear. But thanks to HalfBreadChaos, we can hear it at a reasonable volume here. And for the last Snowgrave Missable, at the end, you can choose to tell Ralsei that it's okay not to smile. And if you do, Ralsei will have a slightly different speech, where he wonders if there's any way to change the prophecy, but worried that it might be changed for the worse. You can also use the shadow crystal in front of the prophecies. Each time it'll mention that the prophecy's words doesn't change. But using it in a final prophecy will have Chris shake the glass, only for the prophecy to remain unchanged. Once you beat the game and load back, you can actually backtrack to Castletown before the Titan fight. There you can see Lancer and the others throwing a party while most of the section is roped off. One of the 2 buildings you can access is the minigame building, where you can find the passcode to Mike's door. But you can already do this earlier if you guessed the password correctly, which is Mike spelled out on the telepad. The only difference is that doing it post-game will have Chris do the Mike fight solo, versus doing it near the beginning where Susie and Ralsei follows you and have dialogue. When you gain your hand powers, you can apply a towering pillar of hats on your friends. This works in real life too, you should try it. After the Mike fight, if you go all the way to the right, then you can find a PNG of a literal Mike in the darkness. It fades away if you say anything or activate your Mike powers. You can also mess with the Chapter 4 recruits and see some unique reactions. For example, Mizzle will think of Lenino as a cute prince. El Nina will want to take selfies with the water sprites. Also, if El Nina is paired with anyone else, she'll worry that it will look like a date, and if Lenino is placed nearby, he will get jealous. Likewise if El Nina is seated elsewhere too. Miss Mizzle will chastise Lenino for betraying his love, and Lenino will mistaken both Mizzles as El Nina. The Gooey will also have their mood dampen if they're paired with any water spirit, but their cool best friends with Bath Lizard will say chill buddy. Now, after you sealed the 3rd sanctuary, you find yourself back in church. There is the closet that you can interact with. Chris will turn the doorknob, but never actually open it. You can also go back to the graveyard and interact with Gerson's gravestone. Susie will react silently. If you didn't know, that bench is known as the Gerson Memorial Bench. Susie mentioned on sitting on the bench when Toriel noticed her. So I find it funny that Gerson was supporting her literally during this event too. Going back to the onion sand spot, you can idle for a while and you and Susie will sit to observe the shore. After a while, she'll mention hearing a song from the other side of the lake. If you somehow manage to beat the game on the PS4 version and skip the incredibly easy to trigger achievements, then our narrator will be shocked and simply ask, "Who are we?" while also calling us by the name we gave all the way back in Chapter 1. An interesting detail though is that beating any chapter without issue will give you an achievement. However, it's that detail there, without issue. If you happen to collect an egg during that chapter, then you won't unlock the achievement. And that's it for this video. I know that it's not everything, but man, I tried to cover as much as I could. There was a lot of minor things I wanted to cover, but decided to cut for the sake of brevity. If you think there's something cool that I missed though, or any corrections, just, let me know. I do engage with the comments. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, I mean that. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next time.